Released in 1977, Exodus is the 9th studio album by Bob Marley and the Wailers, recorded during a time of big change for Bob, as only a year previously, he narrowly escaped an attempt on his life, prompting a move to England to escape the volatility of the political climate in Jamaica. This situation inevitably informed the album's lyrical themes, told through a laid-back style of reggae that incorporated funk and rock influences, and would become a huge success. Even though there were key personnel changes over the years, such as the departure of Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer himself, they continued to be known as the Wailers, despite the new members bringing their own style to the band. The lineup for the album featured brothers Carlton and Aston Barrett on drums and bass respectively, Tyrone Downey on keyboards, Alvin Patterson on percussion, with Judy Mowat, Marcia Griffith and Rita Marley on backing vocals. New boy Junior Marvin was on guitar. Marvin was the hot new guitarist around, known as the young Hendrix of London, with this comparison getting Bob's attention. He was so sought after that on Valentine's Day 1977, he received an offer from Bob and the great Stevie Wonder. After jamming with Bob and the band, he decided to turn down a 10-year contract offer with Stevie and get to work as a Wailer. Marvin recalls meeting Bob. "I met Bob in London on Valentine's Day 1977. We started rehearsing right away. My first jam that day was Exodus, Waiting in Vain and jamming. We played each song for about 45 minutes. Bob was still putting final touches to the lyrics and the music, with keyboard player Tyrone Downey, who at the time was filling in on bass. Tyrone and myself helped write Exodus and Is This Love. It was a very electric experience. It was the first time I ever saw somebody's aura. He was so happy to be alive after the shooting, smiling and having a good time. He was very comfortable in London. There was a great Jamaican and Afro-Caribbean community. The album was recorded at Island Studios in London, with producer Roger Mayer on hand to refine their sound. Mayer, known for his work with Jimi Hendrix, played a crucial role in shaping the guitar tones on Exodus. Having worked with Junior Marvin before, Roger's first job was to buy him a new guitar at Manny's Music Store in New York, picking out the best Fender Stratocaster from the 50 they had in the shop that day. His biggest challenge was getting all the gear that had been shipped out from Jamaica into shape, he said. The first thing I did after meeting Bob was completely set up all the guitars for him. I'd listened to the band live and said, the whole band's completely out of tune. For us to go forward, the first thing to do is make the band solid. It's not perfect. In reggae, that's very important, as with any music orientated by bass. The bass and drum sounds have to be perfect, or else you lose the magical quality of the beat. The bass guitars had suffered being in Jamaica and needed a lot of work, so we started with that. In fact, every guitar that had been down in Jamaica for years had to be completely pulled apart and rebuilt because of what the humidity in the tropics would do to the electrics in the guitar. Once I made sure the band were mechanically sound and actually in tune, that's when we could really get started. That was the beginning of it. Leading up to the recording of Exodus, Bob had just started to enjoy some international recognition, particularly in the US with the release of Rastaman Vibration, which would become his first album to reach the Billboard Top 10. Keen to follow up on this success, the sound of the record was important to its eventual appeal to this new audience. The introduction of Junior Marvin gave them a rockier touch without sacrificing any of the true reggae vibes, Roger said. I got invited down to Jamaica to meet Bob just before the One Love concert. And that's when I first met him. He was a very charming guy. I asked him, what exactly do you want me to do? How can I help you? Bob said, I want to sound more international. That was the right answer, mate, I said. For you to go forward in music and take a step forward, especially in record sales and international recognition, you have to have a record that sounds great. I told him, it has to stand up to the quality of what's around. He couldn't just come from an island and not have the same technological advantages that everybody else had. His record would have sounded a bit amateurish. The band recorded the songs live in the studio, although Bob would then go back over and redo vocals and any guitar parts he thought needed replacing or overdubbing. Bob's previous albums had fewer mics assigned to the instruments, especially the drums. It wasn't uncommon for his early records to feature just 2 mics on the kit, one for the kick drum and one for the rest of the kit. You can hear on Exodus that they employed a multi-mic setup, as you can hear the panning of the cymbals and toms. Also, the crispness of the hi-hats suggests close miking and giving the overall sound a more hi-fi and defined quality. I'm unsure of the exact mics they used, but an AKG D12 was common in those days for the kick, with a Shure SM57 on the snare. The AKG C451 and Neumann U87s were common for picking up cymbals, also with the Shaw SM57s on the toms. The Neumann U87 was lightly used on Bob's vocals, with a touch of compression from the Uri 1176. All this was fed into Island's Helios console, which was renowned for its stellar sonics. Marley primarily played his Gibson Les Paul Special, the same guitar used for the iconic Live at the Rainbow performance after the album's release. Bob bought the guitar in May 1973 at the Top Gear music store on Denmark Street in London. It was modified over the years, with the toggle switch being replaced after the original was broken. This is when it received a much larger poker chip plate surrounding it. He also added an ABR1 Tune-O-Matic bridge and modified the fretboard so it had large block inlays instead of the standard dot ones. White plastic binding was also added around the headstock. Roger Mayer would make further modifications after the album was complete, but this is how it was at the time. Both Junior and Bob were using the Fender twin reverb amps in the studio. Bob did have Marshalls and Ampegs also, but these weren't used so much in the studio. For the wah effect, Junior used the Dunlop Crybaby. Aston Barrett was playing his Fender jazz bass into an acoustic 360 bass amp. He said, "I was using acoustic amplifiers with the Fender. I had two 18-inch cabinets and two 4x15 cabinets. You need them to get that sound, because reggae music is the heartbeat of the people that carries that heavy message of roots, culture and reality. So the bass has to be heavy and the drums have to be steady." Some key effects used on the album were delays, especially the tape delay effect that was popular in dub reggae. Earlier on, Bob was using the Roland Space Echo and Spring reverbs, but it's likely they were using dedicated full-size reel-to-reel machines for these types of delays on Exodus that the studio had. Drummer Carlton Barrett was playing an olive badged Ludwig kit with supraphonic snare at the time, so it's likely this was used on the session. A notable feature is the removal of the bottom skin of the toms, which was popular at the time, especially in reggae. Tyrone Downey is credited with playing the acoustic piano, Hammond organ, Fender Rhodes, and synthesizer on the album. At this time, it's likely the Mini Moog was used, as the Oberheim OBX he would have used later hadn't been released at this time. Listening to the album though, I'm mostly hearing Hammond and acoustic piano, so these appear to be his main instruments throughout the record. Exodus was extremely well received upon its release, praised by critics and selling well all over the world, just as they'd hoped, connecting with more people than ever before. Songs such as One Love, Jammin', Three Little Birds and Waiting in Vain are all greatest hits candidates. Junior Marvin sums it up nicely. "We dedicated 3 months to recording in a London studio, fully aware that the music of Exodus represented the state of mind of millions worldwide, which was simply, give me a statement. The late night sessions provided the perfect platform for everyone to express their creativity and bring something special to the project. Thinking back one time, the rhythm section would be laying tracks, and Bob and I would be in the control room, and Bob would pull out his lyric book to rewrite and tweak. It made me realise even more that me and Bob had the same vision in many areas, and it truly was about the people."